Okay, here I am then, Mark Heath with Suffolk's UFC superstar, one of the best fighters on the planet, Arnold Allen, just a week or so away from your first main event in the UFC, Arnold, in Las Vegas against Calvin Kattar. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy man. Before we get into the nitty gritty, how are you? How's things?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate. Very good. Thanks for having me on as well.
No, much appreciated, mate. Like I say, I know you're a busy guy. So, as it's ticking along at the bottom of the screen there, we've got your first main event a week on Saturday as we're speaking, October the 29th at the Apex, facing off with Calvin Kattar, the guy who's ranked one place above you in the featherweight rankings. Before we get to that fight, I just want to take you back to March and your fight with Dan Hooker,
Yes.
because that went pretty bloody well, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it went just about as good as it could have, really.
Yeah. Were you I mean we chatted obviously before that and the sort of fight you're expecting, clearly Hooker's a guy that was going to come and strike, and you talking about him trying to take your head off. In the end, you wiped him out inside a round. Did you surprise yourself a little bit with that performance, or was that always something on the cards, do you think?
But I've always sort of known I've got heavy hands and, I'm fast and I could do those things. It's
Yeah.
never part of the strategy, and it definitely wasn't part of the strategy. Just like got a knuckle in the eye and I couldn't really see where he was. So I kind of made a decision on the fly to just smother him and chase him because I couldn't
Yeah.
really see. So I was like, I don't want this big, tall, long, rangy guy having space. So I just kept going forward, 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 and yeah, it paid off.
And how good that did that feel? Because we've spoken before about, you've obviously never lost in the UFC, but you referred to yourself as the decisionator, and how much you wanted kind of a highlight reel stoppage, and that certainly was that. So that must have felt great on that such a big stage, and co-main event in a huge arena
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, definitely. That's yeah, it was just sort of all the things like the statement I wanted to make, and I've always sort of believed that the better opposition and all that, the better I'm going to show up and better I'm going to perform, and I think I did exactly that against Dan, who's obviously he's got a lot of big wins. He's got a lot of top. Sorry about that.
That's
He's
right.
got a lot of yeah, elite fighters on his resume, beat guys he's beat, and to have him on mine, he's
Yeah.
a big step.
Does that give you I mean, you said after the fight, didn't you, that I know I hit hard. It's just I've not necessarily fought the guys that allow me to show that, because a lot of the guys come in, try and smother you and take you down, don't they?
Yeah,
But does that give you a little boost of confidence knowing you can do that to elite level operators? I mean, a guy that's actually fought at a higher weight as well.
yeah, definitely, yeah, 100%. And like I said it in the fight before when I fought Sadiq, like he was, I expected him to come stand up and strike a bit more, and
Hmm.
I obviously didn't finish him, but I had success in the stand up and also broke my hand on his head. But yeah, um, yeah. So yeah, I know with like these higher level strikers, I can hang with those guys, and I've got the power to give them problems. So
Before we get on to talking about the cutter fight, how are the hands? Because I know,
yeah,
as you
great.
say, you've broken them before and you've had some issues. They're all good.
Yeah, yeah. I had a couple of cortisol injections on both of them, and bit of a layoff and a lot of rehab and strengthening forearms and trying to get like Popeye now. So yeah, no, we're all good, all good, no problems at all. So
Nice one. Got to protect those money makers.
yeah,
Right
that's it.
then. Next up, then, as I say, Calvin Kattar, a guy one place above you in the rankings, a guy that you've talked about wanting to fight numerous times. He's said the same kind of thing. So, why did you want this fight first of all, and also what are you expecting from him as an opponent?
Hmm. Yeah, it's just a logical step really for me. Even without the last fight against Emmett, if you take that away, like I thought it was going to be the fight they made next, and currently he's one place above me in the rankings, and
Mm,
the style was pretty good. It suits for a fun fight. He's predominantly a boxer. I'm predominantly a boxer, so it should be a good stand up fight on paper. And yeah, there's a lot of things he does that I like. You know, obviously he's main thing. He's tough as nails, and I think he holds the record for most shots received. I think, but I don't think he ever went down, and he was in it trying to win the whole fight. So I don't think there's any quit in him. And I don't know if he's ever been knocked down. I don't think so.
never been stopped. No.
Never been stopped. Yeah. So yeah. So he's tough as nails. He's good, very good. And there's the kind of guys I want to compete against and push me into that sort of elite picture.
Yeah, and like you say, it kind of suits your style as well, doesn't it? Because he's not. You would imagine. I'd be very surprised if he comes in and tries to take you down. He's
Yeah.
he's very much a striker, good boxing background, very useful with the elbow. So you'd
Yes.
be going into this one expecting it to be mainly on the feet, wouldn't you? Unless you decide
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. He has scored takedowns in the past and wrestled, but I don't think that's where he's going to be looking to go.
Mm, mm. And what about your first main event? It's also your first, as far as I know, anyway, 5 minute round fight. So
Yeah,
how does
that
that
is.
change your kind of approach? Because I'd imagine, I mean, training for a normal fight is difficult enough, but training for 5 minute rounds, I'd imagine must be pretty unpleasant.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all right. It just the runs get a little bit longer.
Mm,
I don't do. We always spar 5-5s typically anyway. So if we wrestle 5-5s. We spar it's 5-5s. Grappling is 5-5. So
mm,
just a mental thing more than anything. Yeah, like then you get into camp for a 3-5 fight. The last few weeks of the camp, you kind of focus just 3 5-minute rounds at a higher intensity. So
mm.
now we're just doing 5-5s at a higher intensity. But
And
it's yeah, all good.
And first main event, I think you have fought at the Apex before, haven't you? Because it's
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
a different vibe from being in your last fight was like 20,000 people at the O2,
yeah,
lots of screaming drunk English people cheering you on. Now you're in a kind of closed TV studio essentially in Las
yeah,
Vegas with 300
definitely.
people there, maybe. What's that like as a contrast between those two kind of fighting experiences?
I mean, I know which one I'd prefer, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's all right. So I fought Sadiq there at the sort of middle of the pandemic thing, but
yeah,
so there was no one there. So I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be with a couple of hundred people, but yeah, it wasn't the worst fighting with no one there. It was like the guys in front of me trying to take my head off. I'm still pretty fired up for it, you know. I don't really, yeah, I don't feel it makes much difference. It's once they shut the door, your adrenaline's going to be going and you're going to be switched on. You're not going to be like, oh, there's no crowd. I feel crap.
yeah.
You know,
Because obviously, time to time, a lot of fighters say, I need the crowd to get me going. But I
yeah,
guess with you, you're in the cage with someone, as you say, trying to take your head off. You've got to get going. You've got no choice. It's not like a
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, it's ideally a bit a nice arena. A lot of people sent nice messages and comments and tweets and all sorts saying
hmm.
how they fight deserve to be in an arena and all that. But yeah, it probably does. But it's what it is. It's a main event. It's Vegas, so it's all the good things.
How does that feel as well, being the main event? I mean, when we talk about this card and when it's advertised, your name and face is plastered all
Mm.
over it. It's Allen versus Kattar main event.
Yeah.
Is that a kind of slightly surreal feeling? I know you're not a guy who loves being in the spotlight, as it were. Is that
Yeah.
a bit of an odd one?
No, no. You're not in like a cocky way or anything, but
Mm,
I feel like I put a lot of work in. I work very hard, and
mm,
it's always been part of the plan. Like I write my list down, and it's in the list. And if anything, it's a bit late. So with my delays and all this, but yeah,
yeah.
it's all. I've been visualizing these things for years, so yeah, it's finally coming.
Yeah, I remember one of the first times we ever spoke, you said, I'm doing this to be the best." And we're talking like 6, 7, 8 years ago now, I think,
Yeah.
something like that. I'm not interested in doing anything else other than being the best. So certainly well on your way. In terms of your path to being the best, and training camp this time around,
Mm.
clearly for a long time you've been based at TriStar, then COVID came along and
Yeah.
you came back home and you've been at Renegade up
Yeah, yeah.
in Birmingham for this camp. And you obviously live in Suffolk. Your family's in Suffolk, so you're traveling up and down to Birmingham 3 times a week for sparring. What's that like? And I'd imagine that's pretty tiring. Is it pretty tough?
Um, yeah, so it's not ideal, but that's for sure. I still work with a lot of coaches down this way as well. So obviously
Mm,
Jack and my boxing coach, my Muay Thai coach, and the training partners down here. Um, so I kind of split half my time there and here. But yeah, the drive's all right. I've only been late once, so I hate being late, so that's a winner.
yeah.
But no, it just sort of worked out better. They've got the perfect sort of training partners there I need for this. You know, there's guys there like Jai Herbert, Aiden Lee. You know, there's Tim Wild. He's
Mm,
fighting the same night, and they've just been perfect sparring partners. So they were the perfect guys for like the Dan Hooker fight, and kind of worked out to go like to keep going there for this camp. You know,
yeah. Is
and
that sorry, mate, carry on.
yeah, they're like obviously with Leon winning the title recently, the sort of mood there is on the up. Everyone's sort of putting that extra bit in. You know, everyone's excited at the minute, so it's good.
Yeah, you mentioned Leon there. I wanted to ask you. We've spoken before about similarities between the two of you. You know, two British guys don't do a lot of the trash talk. All you basically do is win and
Yeah.
fly a bit under the radar. But seeing Leon, you know, get that title shot and then win it, that must have been massive for you as someone who kind of compares yourself to him and sees similarities with him, with his progress, his journey.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's to be honest, he was the first guy. As soon as he offered the fight, I asked him his advice on the 5 rounds, and I think he said something about how he took his first 5 rounder in 4 weeks, and he was like, he's like, I weren't trained like you're training. I was on the sofa. So I was like, oh, cool. He's like, you're
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
What's it like training with because I know you obviously you've always trained with a lot of high level guys here
Yeah.
and over at TriStar, but training with a guy like Leon who's just won the world title is literally at the top of his game. He can offer you that advice. That must be really really valuable stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's yeah, like when I first went up there, he was sort of mimicking Dan Hooker for me and sort of copying that style. But he's really good, like really sort of smooth operator. And
Mm.
when I was telling people I thought he was going to win against Usman, I think they yeah, everyone sort of laughed at me, you know, like kind of just saying it because I know him, sort of thing. But yeah, like obviously he had the fatigue because of the altitude and all that. But I thought in the first round when he took him down, I wasn't surprised. I'd seen his
Mm.
sparring and all that, and I thought he was going to take him down. And yeah, I told people that.
Yeah. Does it
Mm.
as someone who obviously you compare to and you look up to with Leon, does it give you that kind of extra inspiration almost to see that a guy who's followed quite a similar path to you and has never been, you know, up there in terms of mouthiness and trash talk and all
Mm.
that sort of stuff, and also he's done it by largely staying in the UK.
Yeah,
That's got to give that's got to be an inspiration for yourself, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. You know, like around Birmingham at the minute, there's like billboards with his face on it. There's like big posters on the walls and stuff like that. And be pretty cool to bring that back to Ipswich, you know. But I don't know. I don't know if MMA is there yet in around here. Yeah, obviously, in the cities, it's bigger, but it's a boxing town for now, isn't it?
Well, I think if you're fighting for a world title, mate, if in that mix, I can see a few almighty posters going up around Ipswich.
Yeah,
Certainly,
I don't
there'll
know.
be a lot of
Don't
support.
want
I
to
think.
intrude.
In terms of training, mate, is that likely to be like a permanent thing now, or are you still planning to eventually go back to Canada? I know your girlfriend's Canadian, all that kind of stuff. Will
Yeah,
you end up being back there? Do you think?
yeah, definitely. Like I still work really closely with Faraz. He watches all the sparring and he gives me game plans and strategy. Like it works quite well, to be honest. I have the great training partners here, like the bodies I need.
Mm.
And, and then Faraz is sort of the mind behind everything and overlooks it and, you know, puts his sort of strategy together and he just tells me what tools to use and when to use it. And I do it.
Can we expect to see the Leon style head kick knockout in this fight? Then have you been drilling that?
That's it's a combination I like to throw. I do like the throw. I dropped I don't know, I mentioned Sadiq again, but I dropped him with that
Yeah,
combination. I
yeah,
just fell over because the canvas was slippy. But yeah, it wasn't quite as good as Leon's, but yeah.
There's still time, mate. You can improve on that, I'm sure. And we always have to chat now, which is quite nice, actually. We can talk generally now about the title picture and you being in it, because when you watch fights in the featherweight division now, your name genuinely gets brought up in that
Yeah.
kind of title picture. People are saying, "What about the new blood?" You know, Arnold Allen. When they talk about Volkanovski having beaten Max Holloway about 400 times, whatever it is now.
Mm.
Where do you see yourself within that picture? Clearly, you know, you want to win this fight, and that takes you another step up the ladder. Then how far away are you, do you think? Because you're sixth ranked at the moment. You look at the rankings. Volkanovski's obviously the champion.
Yeah.
He's beaten Max Holloway, who's the number one contender, 3 times.
Yeah.
And then you've got people like Ortega and Emmett and just Calvin above you. So you've got to be close, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think it's all performance based in it. Obviously, not looking past Calvin.
Hmm.
But, yeah, it's got to be a couple wins away from it. And I think what's his face? Volkanovski's getting the next lightweight shot, isn't he? I know he's standing in for this one if anything happens, but he's Dana White come out today and said he's getting the next shot. So
All right.
so
Okay.
I'm assuming there will be an interim at some point with
So
this.
that's so in theory, then that could be your next step. You win this one, and then maybe an interim fight with someone like Max or Ortega,
Yeah.
someone like that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, yeah, that could be. Hmm.
How do you feel you match up with Volkanovski as a champion?
Yeah, quite good. Pretty good to be fair. He's someone. I think that his main weapon, like his main thing, is his strategy. He's
Mm.
a great tactician, and never really comes away from his game plan. He executes it perfectly. But I'm also someone like that, Not the last fight, actually. Scrap that one. I didn't see the tag game plan, but yeah. I think that's one of his best tools. And working with someone like Faraz, like, he's one of the best to come up with strategies and plans. And
Mm.
yeah, I'd be confident with something like that.
Let's hope it happens. Can't be too long now, surely. In terms of then the kind of logistics now for this fight, we're sitting here. I think you're flying out to America on Friday.
Yeah.
Fights a week on Saturday. What's that like logistically for a fighter for yourself? Like in terms of the weight making process and all that kind of thing. Does that pose any challenges, or is that fairly straightforward?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Just I want to go the Friday, just to ideally, if it was closer to home, I'd probably go out as late as possible. But
Hmm.
just to acclimatize, get the jet lag off, whatever extra weight you carry traveling, like flying, that'll be sort of gone by the weekend, and then back to normal by the
Yeah.
Monday, and all back to business. I had done it before, where I got there the Sunday from Montreal. And I went for a run, and my legs were in pieces for a couple of days. So I thought I'd just go a bit earlier and rule that out.
Yeah. Do you cut much weight for fights? What kind of weight are you walking around at?
Yeah, not massive. Probably the average, I think, for the division, like cutting probably about 20 pounds over or something at the minute. But yeah, like that's probably standard, I think.
Yeah. And we've talked a lot about you fighting and clearly being in big fights. I know you like having your dad with you, pacer. He's coming over. I can understand that, calm you down, but you feel good about yourself. Are there any other sort of superstitions or anything like that you have going into fights, things you like to do for every fight? Or are you kind
Uh,
of, I'll just go in there and do what I do?
I just train my ass off. That's my
Yeah.
only superstition. Just yeah, try and leave no stone unturned, like that's it. That's the only superstition. I used
That's
to have all sorts, but like I used to have like a certain pair of pants I had to fight in, and yeah, just like I have to wear these shorts because I won in them like 4 times or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, those things didn't happen, like, and I still won, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Hmm.
Doesn't mean anything.
I guess being super prepared is the best, preparation superstition you can have. Um,
Yeah,
let's talk about the fight then. We've already mentioned what kind of fight you're expecting.
yeah.
How do you see it playing out? 5 5-minute rounds. We've talked. Calvin has never been stopped.
Mm,
He's generally, when he's lost, he's only lost to the very top guys. Your
yeah.
Max Holloways, people like that. So, are you expecting a like 25-minute kind of war of attrition sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely, he doesn't take a backward step. He's the kind of guy who's gonna walk you down with his hands tight to his head and throw elbows and punches and knees and try
Mm,
and take you out. So, and I don't know, sometimes I oblige that and sometimes I move out the way. But yeah, it's a mixed bag with me, but he's quite cerebral. Kind of know what you're gonna get when he fights. I mean,
yeah.
it's always a dog fight. He's gonna walk you down and try and take your head off. So
Yeah,
mm,
and definitely an opportunity. You say you both got boxing backgrounds. It's often talked about Kattar being one of the best boxers in MMA. You're
yeah,
never really in that discussion, which I don't understand because at one point you're on the verge of being a professional boxer, weren't you? So
yeah,
um, a chance really to show those hands off again.
yeah. I just think it's the knockouts. I haven't knocked a load of people out in the UFC, so I guess that's why I'm not in the talk. But I've done some good boxing stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's your prediction then for this one? Clearly, you're going to emerge with your hand raised, be 10-0 in the UFC.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to happen though?
Um, I think it's just me outmaneuvering him, outskilling him, and just being too versatile. Really, I think that's it. Mm.
On paper, and I
Yeah.
don't want you to give away any game plan, you would say, obviously, in terms of striking, you both got a striking background, but you would say you are the more well-rounded fighter. You maybe have the ability to
Mm.
grapple more than he does, take it to the floor. Is that, again, I don't want you to give too much away, but is that part of your thinking going into this?
No,
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 okay.
no, listen, not really. No.
Just gonna stand and bang and see what happens. I
Yeah, I
like
haven't
it.
really put too much emphasis on it. No. Oh, yeah, I'm very confident in my grappling and wrestling. This, I've submitted black belts and stuff
Mm,
like that, but I've never really chased the wrestling and submissions, and I can wrestle. I can grapple.
We've
Yeah,
seen it.
I'm still a brown belt, but everyone says I'm sandbagging, so yeah, I don't know.
Right then, a couple more questions, Arnold. I appreciate your time. I don't want to take too much more of your time. You mentioned your list there. So main event was on there. You're
Yeah.
going to tick that one off. What else is left on that list?
Uh, well, I'd like to be champion. That's
Well,
obviously
clearly, yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Is that the last one, or is that like?
no, I got apparently somewhere I wrote this when I was young, so I got to buy my mum and dad a house, so
Oh.
can't even buy my own house yet. Yeah, yeah. But, yeah, there's a few of those on there.
Yeah, as you're now, I mean, obviously, the more you go up the levels and you get more successful and that kind of thing, you must have
Yeah,
people recognize you more. What is that kind of odd? And also, you get a lot of the social media stuff as well, don't you? The kind of positive and negative side of that. What's
yeah.
that like as an athlete to deal with?
Um, yeah, like, to be honest, it's like most of the people, like, on the social media are pretty
Mm,
I think they kinda maybe understand me a little bit, like, I don't really get too much negative stuff. It's mainly
mm,
guys, like, messing about. Like, they'll send me negative things, but I know it's a joke sort of thing.
yeah.
Uh, People have sent me stuff before, and I always sort of laugh about it. I never really get too upset. So people send me things like kinda taking the mick and having a bit of fun, but, yeah, I know it ain't serious. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fun.
And
Mhm.
how about people coming up and asking for pictures? That's got to be kind of weird.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's not the biggest, sort of area for, like, the UFC, sort of. It's not people don't really know it, so
Yeah.
I do get people do ask for pictures and stuff, but I do still feel like people don't really know who I am, but they know kinda
Mm.
I've seen that guy somewhere or, like, maybe here and there. But, I've had people ask me for pictures, they sort of said the wrong name and whatnot. I'm just like, "Yeah, I'll take
Who did
Arthur."
who did oh, Arthur Allen. I
Yeah,
thought they'd maybe mistaken you for someone else entirely, but
it
Arthur
was
Allen.
just, "Thanks for the picture, Arnold." Arthur. I was like, "Alright,
Yeah,
mate."
yeah, nice one.
Yeah,
I've got to ask as well, final question now. Ipswich Town,
yeah,
in terms of being recognised and that kind of thing, they had you down as a VIP guest of honour
yeah,
at a
that's
game.
cool.
So you went, you were suited and booted, looked very smart, and then you had an interview on the pitch. What was that whole experience like? Because I know you obviously you're a Town fan, being
Yeah,
in front of a crowd, a stadium at a game like that must have been
yeah.
nice and also a bit surreal.
It was a bit that was more nerve-wracking than fighting in front of 20,000 people 'cause, don't really have to talk when you're
Yeah.
fighting, ask questions and all that, but, yeah, it was cool, but, yeah, that I was more nervous for that than fighting, to be fair.
I can imagine, yeah, you're kind of walking out on a pitch and just have a guy asking you questions wearing
Yeah.
a suit. It's not really, what you do in your day-to-day life, is it? So,
Oh,
bit of a change. And obviously, I've got to ask finally, Ipswich Town doing very well at the moment. I
mm,
know you get to games when you can. This is going to be the season, though, isn't it? They're gonna finally win promotion this season. We can all
yeah,
celebrate.
yeah, things are looking up. I think for the whole town, like, things are looking up. Obviously, Fab's gonna have some news soon, I'm sure, and, I know I'm fighting in the UFC main event. Ipswich are going up. It's there's going to be more people coming through in boxing and MMA. I'm sure it's going to be good. It's going to be a
Yes,
good time.
exciting times. Thank you,
Mm.
Arnold. Is there anything else that you wanted to say that I haven't asked you
Uh,
before we head off?
no, no, I covered everything. I think.
Superb. Well, thanks again for your time, mate. Best of luck. I know a lot of people will be cheering you on from Suffolk and Ipswich,
Appreciate it.
and I'm sure you'll come back home with the right result, and we can start talking about title fights next year, maybe.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, cheers.
Nice one. Thanks, Arnold.